Hello and many thanks for joining us on People, Politics and Power. This edition of the program is dedicated to the men and women of the Nigerian Armed Forces, dead and living, who have and continue to put their lives on the line in the defense, the security, and the unity of Nigeria. They represent the finest of Nigeria's patriots. The 2021 Armed Forces Remembrance Day celebration is the 51st anniversary since the end of the Nigerian Civil War in 1970. The event is marked on January 15 every year to honor the servicemen of the Nigerian Armed Forces. It also honors veterans of World War I and II, as well as those of the Nigerian Civil War and peace support operations around the world. The observance was instituted by the end of the Nigerian Civil War, following the victory of the federal troops over Biafran troops on January 15, 1970. It replaced November 11, which until then had been observed as Poppy Day, instituted by the British colonialists and observed across the Commonwealth in honor of the World War I. Since then, events are held at national and state levels to mark the day. It involves military parades and laying of wreaths as cenotaphs in Abuja and the 36 state capitals. Now, as we saw earlier today, on the program, today we shall examine the significance of this day, that is the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, especially for serving men and women as a gesture of their sacrifices. Recorded in 2020, the Nigerian government announced plans to allocate funds to support families of fallen soldiers as part of a welfare scheme, and possibly to motivate serving and retired men and women of the forces to give their very best. Now, 1 year after, how far and how well? The 2021 celebration is coming at a time and in the midst of the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, and also at a time when men and women of the armed forces are spread across various parts of the country, engaging different forms of security threats to the corporate existence of Nigeria. How much is being done by government, by corporate organizations, and by individual Nigerians to help and encourage this undertaking by these men and women in uniform? These are some of the matters we will be taking up on the program today. That's when we return from this short break. Stay with us.
Grand Commander of the Order of the Federal Republic, His Excellency the President, is laying wreath here at the National Remembrance Arcade to honor the unknown soldier, to honor those who are currently in the front line, to honor those who are taking part in ensuring that peace is maintained across our nation, to honor those who made it possible for us to gather here today. Is the Vice President, Federal Republic of Nigeria. It is indeed a patriotic event to celebrate and honor patriots of our great nation, Nigeria, those who gave their last breath to ensure that peace is maintained.
Next is the reveille. The reveille signifies the last respect in honor of our fallen heroes. Shall we please rise while officers and warrant officers in uniform are to please salute.
All right, those were some of the highlights of the events that took place in the Nigerian capital today at the National Cenotaph, right there at the opposite the Eagle Square in the Central Business District of Abuja. Well, that event itself is a yearly one, but this year is unique. Unique in a sense that it took place in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, the second wave, and you saw there how much social distancing was observed by all those who were present there. But of course, that in any way did not dampen the mood of the event. Well, I'm joined in the studio now by Colonel John Adache. Colonel Adache is a retired officer of the Nigerian Armed Forces. He is defense and security and communications pundit who is based here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Colonel John Adache, thank you so much for
joining us. Thank you, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you.
Right, so first, let's look at what happened today. This is the way it was celebrated today is unlike what used to be in the past, all because of the second wave of the COVID pandemic. Did it in any way distract from the spirit and the letter of the celebrations?
Certainly it does not. Moreover, it heightens the level to which this nation loves its heroes, those who have laid down their lives for the nation. And therefore, even in the midst of a pandemic such as this, which is much more serious than the first wave, it is significant that Nigeria and Nigerians yet are able to appreciate their fallen heroes.
Now, let's look back at the history of the Armed Forces Remembrance Day. It became the Nigerian Armed Forces Remembrance Day after the Civil War in 1970. Before then, we had what was celebrated across the Commonwealth as the Poppy Day, which was instituted by the colonialists. Yes. Since it was instituted 51 years ago, how much difference has it made in the lives of both the living and the families of the dead heroes?
Yeah, just like you recalled, the celebration can be located within context of what used to be the Poppy Day on 11th November every year, otherwise also called the Armistice Day. And but with the Nigerian Civil War, which came to an end in 1970, it was felt that to bring the impact home and to make it more relevant to our own situation, since we have had an experience of a civil war, the Nigerian Biafra Civil War, which ended in 1970, specifically 15th of January, it was felt that that day should be our own memorial day to celebrate the fallen heroes and those living as well. If you are talking about the impact it has made over time in terms of welfare and so on, I would say, arguably, that symbolically, it has always been marked. Yes, governments, both at the federal and state levels, and even down to the local government levels, they come to celebrate our heroes annually. Symbolically, yes. But in terms of other responsibilities that they ought to carry out, in terms of looking after the welfare of the fallen heroes and even those who are serving, I think that yet leaves much to be desired, because there are so many problems. If you interact with the living, not talk of the families of those who have given up their lives for the country.
Well, I was just going to come to that. There are many people who think that January 15th Armed Forces Remembrance Day is simply symbolic, and that apart from the ceremonies in the various state capitals and the federal capital territory here at the national level, nothing much seemed to be going on, especially with families of those who sacrificed their lives for the unity of Nigeria, whether in the Civil War, whether at international peacekeeping operations, or indeed during the First and Second World Wars.
Well, I think that goes with the Nigerian character. Lip service, paying lip service to what ought to be taken very seriously. Because if people have given their life, supreme sacrifice for the nation and its people, they ought to be much more recognized. Yes, the federal government and the governors will come out annually to donate pittance to the Legion. Like for instance, a state governor will donate 2 million to the Legion in the state. What does 2 million, what can it do for the welfare of the armed forces? 2 million, convert that to dollars, since most of our marketing is denominated in dollars. It's converted to dollars. How much is it? That is what one individual, an industrialist, should be able to donate, not government. So symbolically, it's just that. Beyond that, we are waiting for the next year for the emblem appeal launch, and the governor will come out again and donate 2 million, and they clap for him. That is very cynical, really. So I don't think that they have done much. You see, when government says they want to look after the welfare of the families, I expect that at the end of each year, they should appoint committees that should look into certain areas of need of such members and their families, and do something that can be used to remember that this is what the government has done. Outside of that, we expect private organizations who are normally invited to the emblem appeal launch to follow in the same pattern by doing whatever they can do, offer employment to those who are able to work, and so on. But we don't see such, other than to say, I donate 2 million. Then maybe others around will buy the emblem for 100 naira, 200 naira. Is that what will help? It does not, to my mind, does not help. We need to go beyond lip service to such issues.
Now, given that scenario that you have painted, Colonel, how much of this do you think affects the morale and the enthusiasm of serving men and women of the forces who are on ground in various parts of the country today? I mean, we have banditry in the northwest. In fact, we do have banditry almost everywhere in Nigeria at the moment. Mm-hmm. We have the Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast. We have all manner of security threats, in different parts of the country. And men and women of the armed forces are involved in one way or the other in trying to put these threats down. When you talk like this, when you paint a picture such as you have painted, how much of it does it affect the morale of those who are on the field right now, who are in the battlefronts, who are in different fronts, trying to keep Nigeria safe and keep Nigeria united?
Of course, it's a negativity. The morale of the fighting forces now, going by that, certainly will be affected. Yeah, because one day they will come back after fighting. That is, for those of them who will survive the war, they will come back into society. And they're already seeing what is happening to their predecessors out of service. The nation or people almost do not have regard for them. They look at them as dead woods. These are people who have put their life to your service in the past. They are suffering. Go to the streets. So when they look back, they are not encouraged to give their best, especially against the background of what is happening in the Northeast. The Boko Haram insurgency, the banditry all over the place, and so many aspects of insecurity that abounds in the country. Certainly, they will not be encouraged to give their best. And if they don't give their best, then the issue of security and other forms of insecurity around will continue to go along intractably.
A few years back, it was common sight in the Nigerian capital, Abuja, here, to see veterans, army pensioners sleeping under bridges in the capital, waiting for their pensions. Has that situation improved somehow?
Yes, to a large extent, that has improved over time, particularly from the period of General Olusegun Obasanjo as head of state, which he tried to stabilize the military pension system. Otherwise, you see a lot of screenings going around. People leave Abuja, Maiduguri to Lagos to get screened. But with that regime, they try to centralize everything, bring everybody back to their state or region to make screening processes less cumbersome. So that is the difficulties somehow. And to that extent, you hardly see veterans on the streets begging, because it was shameful. Shameful that such persons leave their families to come to a place like Abuja, where they have no families, no relations to stay. They sleep under the bridges, begging to eat something after serving their country. That has, to a large extent, improved now. And over time, through also President Jonathan's regime, it was maintained. And to the present government of General Muhammad Buhari, it has improved considerably, even though there are still problems. To a large extent, one must commend government for continuity in that regard, because these days, pensions are paid as at and when due, unlike in the past. When people leave, when they retire, sometimes it took 2 years to get your pension and something processed. But these days, it's a bit seamless, and it has improved much more. So I think to that extent, government must be commended in that regard.
I'm talking about the celebrations that we saw today. Here in Abuja, in the 36 states of the Federation, how much are veterans and military pensioners involved in these events?
Well, if you watch the parade annually, apart from the serving members of the armed forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, the paramilitary, you could see that the veterans are represented, ex-servicemen in their uniform too. I think they normally form the last guards or so. And they take part in the parade to make them have a sense of belonging, like their serving colleagues. Outside of that, the chairman of the Nigerian Legion also lays wreath after the commander-in-chief, the service chiefs, the minister of FCT, and so on. The chairman of the Nigerian Legion also lays wreath, and that is very significant, because they also lay it on behalf and in memory and honor of their dead colleagues. So they are involved.
Well, let me say here that the Nigerian Legion, an official of the Nigerian Legion, was invited to this program. She would have been here by now, but she's yet to come. But let me ask you this question. I recall that, I think it was during the Babangida administration, that efforts were made to set up some commercial ventures for the Legion as a way of enhancing their income and the income of the Legion as a body. I recall that transport companies or so were set up for them, and maybe one or two other enterprises. How well are those ones doing?
Honestly, I don't have the facts, but I do know, and I'm conscious of the fact that those efforts that were being made, to establish legionnaires through such ventures may be no more, because I do not see. Ordinarily, there used to be buses that ply the routes, and they are labeled Nigerian Legion. I can't remember when I last saw one. Well, if anything, if it has collapsed, or if they have collapsed, it should be an issue of management, I should say. Because generally, management is a problem in this country. Outside of government, corporate entities that we expect them to be serious, to run ventures that will be profitable, to sustain them. Such ventures are made to collapse, either due to one reason or the other. The commonly cited reason is corruption. You cannot rule out corruption in and out of service. It happens in those realms too. And therefore, I would think that, much as the reason behind setting them up was to further engineer them to be self-sustaining, it was good enough. But if government assists you to set up something, the same government will not come and help you manage it. It is a seriousness that you put into it to manage it and bring it up that will sustain it. Otherwise, if they were available today, maybe the ex-servicemen will not be running helter and skelter every year, running to government, begging for funds. Yeah, because I look at it as begging for funds. It's an annual event. Even though it's an honor thing, it's a remembrance thing, but it's partially a begging situation for funds. Otherwise, by now, one expects that the Nigerian Armed Forces, the legionnaires, by now, ought to have established themselves. Compare them to other nations. Normally, we'll cite Britain, US, Canada, Commonwealth nations, and so on. But at our level, South Africa here, in that regard, I think they are doing better than us in Nigeria. And I would think even Ghana. So I think that the government, outside of giving pittances every year to legionnaires, they should look at how they assist to establish something worthwhile, something concrete, something that could be put members of their families, legionnaire family, into employment. That is part of helping to sustain them. I think that is an area that should be looked into seriously.
So, assuming that these efforts in the past are not doing as well as they ought to do, or in fact some of them may have collapsed as a result of poor management and all of that, what do you think that veterans, well-established veterans and members of the Nigerian Legion can do, even outside of government, to either revive or set up new ventures?
Yeah, I think the problem lies with those to whom the responsibilities are placed. Because if you look at it, there are well-established veterans. There are senior officers who are retired, who are doing well on their own. They have agro businesses. They have manufacturing setups. They are doing well in so many private dimensions. But you see such, they have withdrawn. They have cocooned themselves to their own private enterprises, outside of extending interests to their colleagues. I mean, if you look at those who are managing the legions and something, they are more or less other ranks. I'm not saying they are not good, but we are talking about acumen. Even while in service, acumen of the military, of the officers, is higher, much higher than those of the other ranks. So if in retirement you bring them to be the ones to manage it, then you can look at the output. Okay, even look at the celebration that is taking place. Who do you see? Is the other ranks that you see essentially. Where do you see retired senior officers? Except maybe those of them who are in government. And because they are in government, they are forced to come. Let me so to say, forced to come. And they are present. But would you see so many retired officers taking part in these celebrations? I don't know to what extent they are invited. That's another question. But I think that government needs to get to involve them much more than they are doing presently.
Is it that the Legion is conceptualized in such a way that it is only those in other ranks that populate it, or is it that the senior officers or retired senior officers, retired veterans, simply keep away from the Legion? What is the makeup of the Legion that makes it possible for only people from other ranks to populate it and to dominate it?
Well, it is not conceptualized around other ranks because a retired soldier, officer, they are the same thing. You are on the same plane now, on the same platform. Unlike while in service, the segregational aspect of it, in terms of officer, your soldier, is not as rigid. Therefore, everybody is supposed to come together and take part. But historically, the officers, so to say, seem to be aloof. Maybe because they are better equipped, maybe in terms of pension, because pension is also is applicable to the rank in which you left service. And because of the disparity between what a soldier and an officer earns, that is carried on forward to retirement period. Maybe the officers are a bit more comfortable. So therefore they feel that they want to be to themselves. Of course, the chairman normally of the Legion is normally an officer. I have not been able to see any other rank chair the organization. It's always the officer. But the officers, outside of him, it's maybe just one officer. Outside of him, the rest, the admin setup is other ranks. And you can imagine what only one officer can do to administer the entire Legion. Of course, in the states, you will have the officers head the state chapters too, but the same parameters run down in terms of the admin setup of the process.
All right, we're looking at Nigeria Armed Forces Remembrance Day. Today, January 15th, is the Remembrance Day, and it's been observed since 1970 when the Nigerian Civil War ends. That makes it today's event the 51st anniversary. And now, 51 years after, now recall that at the end of the Nigerian Civil War in 1970, it was a case of no victor, no vanquished. At least that were the words of the then Nigerian military head of state, General Yakubu Gowon. Now, after 51 years, how much of that no victor, no vanquished have we seen in terms of the welfare of officers and men who prosecuted that war on both sides of the divide? We'll talk about that when we return.
Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and days of old lang syne? For old lang syne, we'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. And here's a hand, my trusty friend, that gives a hand to thine. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. For old lang syne. for old lang syne. We'll take a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and days of old lang syne?
Indeed, very grateful to men and women of our armed forces for keeping us safe, for protecting our territorial integrity, and of course, keeping the Nigerian unity intact, a united country that we have been since 1960 when we gained independence from the colonialists. Of course, we had for 30 months, we had to fight a civil war to keep Nigeria one, and we have remained one for that long and hope to remain one. Well, we did tell you earlier on that an officer or an official of the Nigerian Legion was supposed to join us. Well, she's on the phone now. Mrs. Morenike Henry is the Director of Corporate Affairs of the Nigerian Legion. I guess that she is unable to make it to the studio because of the events in the city. Mrs. Morenike Henry, thank you so much for joining us. Hello, Mrs. Henry?
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. I can hear you.
Thank you so much. Well, today is January 15. You are unable to join us in the studio. I guess the events at the Eagle Square, the National Senate have made it not easy for you to get here. But tell us, how significant is this day to the Nigerian Legion? Can you hear us, Mrs. Henry?
Yes. The day is a very great day. Can you speak louder a bit?
I can hear you, Mrs. Henry. Please go ahead.
Can you speak louder a bit?
I'm virtually shouting from here. Just go on and talk. We can hear you.
Okay, the day is a very great day. Okay. The day is a very great day. We use this day to commemorate with the fallen heroes and their families, and to appreciate and those ones that are in war front now. We appreciate them a lot. There is nothing we can do.
So, Mrs. Henry, what is the Nigerian Legion doing for families of men and women of the armed forces who have paid the supreme price in the various battles that we have seen over time, over the years, in the Civil War, in the insurgencies, in banditry, and even during the First and Second World Wars? What is the role of the Nigerian Legion in keeping their families happy and progressive?
Actually, it has been a long journey and a rough journey. We have been trying to organize with some private sector to join hand with us in order to be able to help us, because government cannot do it alone. Because when you look at the list of the widows, the veteran children, it goes a long way. So we are pleading that even the people that for the public.
Go on. We are
For the
listening to you. Please go
We are
on.
pleading for the public, private sectors, to join hand with us in Veteran House, in Legion House, in order to move our flight forward and to do more than which we planned for.
Now, Mrs. Henry, you recall that at some point the Nigerian Legion has some commercial enterprises which were put in place supposedly to help improve the finances of the Legion in order to be able to cater for its members. What has happened to those ventures?
As the first speaker said, that we lack maintenance in the country. Those things are for private bodies. They don't belong to Nigerian Legion.
So
if the people decide to withdraw or lack of maintenance, there is nothing we can do. We can't hold the owner of the property and say you have to cooperate with us or you have to work with us.
So what exactly does the Nigerian Legion own, and what are its plans moving forward?
Our plan in moving forward now, some private companies have come in now again since we started this program to partner with us. Transport system, agro system, colleging, and some others in some other business which we are with after the Armed Forces Remembrance Day today. Many of them will come forward to come and have a meeting with us in our office.
Now beyond
And even the
go on.
Even we've invite some foreigners that are even willing to teach us more, because a lot of people don't even know what Nigerian Legion is. So now we are trying to go out, even the retirees, we are trying to go out and explain more to them what veterans and Nigerian and Legionnaires mean. Legion's house is a resting place for the military people.
All right. Beyond the monies that are donated by state governments, by the federal government, and by corporate organizations and individuals when they launch the emblem on occasions like this, what other forms of support is the Legion getting from the federal and the state governments?
Thank you very, very much. The state governors have been doing their best. Likewise, the federal government have been doing their best. But we cannot put all in state government and the federal government. Especially the commander-in-chief, our president, he even gave us access to employ the youth. Those are the veterans' children from 18 to 35 for a security that we can employ them in part of securities to use them as a security boys and men. And some of them that have good qualification, we go forward to look for a job for them.
All right, Mrs. Henry, thank you so much. Stay with us. Let me come back to the studio where I have Colonel John Adache, retired. Colonel, you have listened to the Director of Corporate Affairs of the Nigerian Legion. And I just wonder, as he was talking, whether or not there's any concerted effort in the military, in the armed forces, to impart some skills to get the men and women of the armed forces to acquire some skills in preparation for their eventual exit from the forces and for them to be able to stand on their own when they do eventually retire?
Well, I do know that particularly at the other ranks level, up to master warrant officers, they normally go to Nigerian Armed Forces Resettlement Center in Oshodi at about 6 months to their exit for some form of training.
Skills acquisition.
Skills acquisition in various areas: agriculture, ICT, and so on. As you enroll, I mean, you make your choice, and you are trained along that line. That program has, as part of it, an IT function, IT aspect, whereby they search for them places to do such IT, and then to come back before they graduate. When they graduate, they're supposed to have acquired those skills, and when they are paid their gratuity, they are supposed to use it to establish themselves. But the extent to which there have been successes in that regard, in terms of individual prosperity, is what I do not know. But I will expect that the Nigerian Armed Forces Resettlement Center should have a follow-up research program, a monitoring program for its trainees outside the training and graduation, and where they are settled, the extent to which they have succeeded in their ventures needs to be known. If there are deficiencies, they could be advised, and they will know how to probably fine-tune programs and so on. Where there are failures and where there are successes, it must be measurable. So I think that is exactly what needs to be done to improve it. Otherwise, skills acquisition programs are actually organized across the forces.
Mm. Now, if you recall, in some climes, in some countries of the world, men and women in uniform, both serving and those who are retired, are accorded some privileges, such as discounts and rebates when they go to shops to buy things, even in terms of transportation and what have you, as a gesture of appreciation for the sacrifices that they have made for their country. There doesn't seem to be so much awareness in the Nigerian society about this. It doesn't seem as if such gestures are accorded across board to men and women in uniform and who have served their countries to enjoy such privileges.
Well, in principle, let me say they are known. But in practice, you could hardly say that they are implemented. Tell me, as a retired officer or soldier, I go to a shop, I want to do some purchases. I present my retired ID card. By the Nigerian context, I don't think anybody recognizes that. Maybe it is out of lack of knowledge, lack of conscientization by society, or lack of appreciation. Yeah, because if you look at it, are we really an appreciative society? Yeah, because when I have interchanges or interaction with some civilians, they believe that you as a soldier, you are doing your work. you sign to die for the country. They pecuniarize it. They think you have been paid for it. They don't recognize the value of what you are doing. Most Nigerians, so to say, arguably. So the lack of appreciation is also a principal character of the Nigerian.
Would you say that is a failure on the part of government and successive governments over the years? Even at a time when we have had military government who could have made this more like a policy and enlightened the Nigerian society about this whole process and how much sacrifice men in uniform are making to keep the rest of us safe?
Well, I wouldn't say government, even though government has a role. As individuals, we need to be appreciative, or we need to be more appreciative. We need to recognize values. So, if we recognize values by ourselves, as individuals, as corporate groups, we can have such appreciation. An owner of an airline can come up and say, I give so and so. He can make it a national thing, a public announcement, that if you are a military person and you go by my boss or my airline, you have such. Part of enlightenment might be part of the problem. So I think we need to do more of that.
All right, Colonel, this is 51 years after the Civil War. It's 51 years since we started celebrating the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, after we cut off the ties with the Poppy Day and all of that. Now, let's look at 51 years after. Have we really imbibed the spirit of no victor, no vanquished after the Civil War? On both, I mean, soldiers fought on both sides of the divide.
Yeah.
Are they all catered for, one way or the other?
Yeah, I think that spirit, by my opinion, to a large extent, has been imbibed. Because for one, we have embraced ourselves. The Nigerian side and the Biafran side. We are all Nigerians now. We are all people of one nation. We integrate. And I think most of the soldiers were reintegrated back into service, both at the officer and I think the other ranks corps. Yeah, in those days there used to be some handicapped Biafrans around Ojiliva annually, whose plight was always featured on television. I no longer see them. I think the government was trying to do something to settle those handicapped soldiers then, because I no longer see them highlighted. So I believe to a very large extent, the spirit of no victor, no vanquished has been imbibed, even though the other side, because of certain political reasons, still feel that they are being marginalized because of what happened during the war. That is a question that is left to government. So, but I believe that that spirit, to a very large extent, has been imbibed by both sides.
All right, so moving forward, I mean, in another 12 months, we'll be talking of the 52nd anniversary of this. Between now and then, what do you think can be done to actually impact the lives of families of the fallen heroes and veterans like you who have made a career of the military, of the armed forces, and have given your very best and your all to this country?
To that extent, let me challenge the Legion at the national level and the states. They should establish contact with the various state governments, task them to do something for them, something concrete, beyond the 2 million they normally give as a pittance. Let them task them. If they do something concrete, history will remember them. the living heroes and families of the fallen will also remember them. Government at the federal level should also take a task and do something very concrete.
Thank you so much. Colonel John Adache, retired, a defense, security, and communications pundit. Lives here in the nation's capital, Abuja, joining me here in the studio. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
much. And of
much.
course, we also had on the telephone line Morenike Henry, who is the Director of Corporate Affairs of the Nigerian Legion. Today being the Armed Forces Remembrance Day in Nigeria. And of course, there have been celebrations to mark this day in the Nigerian capital here, Abuja, the cenotaph, the national cenotaph, and in all the 36 states of the Federation. Thank you so much for investing your time with us, and continue to appreciate our men and women in uniform, those who are serving, those who are retired and are living, and the families of those who have paid the supreme price for the continued peace and unity of Nigeria. I am Imoni Amarere. Bye for now.